The emergency beacon cut through the darkness of space like a scream. Commander HFY of the Galactic Defense Coalition received the distress signal while patrolling the Outer Rim territories. His scaled hands trembled as he read the transmission from Research Station Kepler-7. Coalition Command, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez at Kepler-7. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Repeat, we are under attack. They came out of nowhere. Our defense grid is failing. We have civilians, including children. Please send backup immediately. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving only static in its wake. HFY's reptilian features hardened. Kepler-7 was a joint research facility studying ancient alien artifacts discovered in the Vega system. The station housed over 300 beings from 12 different species, including families of researchers. Most importantly, they had no military defenses beyond basic shields and automated turrets. He immediately contacted Coalition Command on Proxima Station. The response came within minutes from Admiral Korthek, a massive insectoid whose voice buzzed with authority through the communicator. Commander HFY, we've received the distress call. Unfortunately, our nearest fleet is engaged in operations in the Andromeda sector. The earliest we can deploy a rescue force is 72 hours. 72 hours? HFY's voice cracked with disbelief. Admiral, they may not survive the next 72 minutes. I understand your concern, Commander. However, we cannot compromise ongoing operations for what about the human territories? HFY interrupted, desperation creeping into his voice. They're only 6 hours away from Kepler-7. A long pause followed. Admiral Korthek's mandibles clicked nervously. Commander, you know how unpredictable humans can be. They've only been part of the coalition for 3 years. Their military doctrine is still considered primitive by our standards. Primitive or not, they're the only option we have. Another pause. Very well. I'll send a request to Earth Command, but don't expect much. They'll probably send a small patrol ship at best. The communication ended, leaving HFY staring at the star charts. 6 hours to Kepler-7. If the humans responded immediately, they might arrive before it was too late. Meanwhile, on Earth's military command station orbiting Luna, General Patricia Hayes reviewed the coalition's request with her staff. The holographic display showed Kepler-7's location and the estimated number of hostiles. Ma'am, long-range sensors indicate at least 15 enemy vessels surrounding the station, reported Colonel Martinez. Unknown configuration, but they appear to be heavily armed. Any idea who they are? Hayes asked. Negative. The Coalition database has no records matching these ship designs. They could be pirates, slavers, or something worse. Hayes studied the tactical display. 300 innocent beings trapped on a research station, facing an unknown enemy with superior numbers. The Coalition's nearest fleet was days away. This was exactly the kind of situation that required immediate action. Colonel, what's our fastest response capability? We could have the 3rd Expeditionary Regiment ready for deployment within 2 hours. That's 2,000 Marines, full combat loadout, with naval support. 2,000? Hayes raised an eyebrow. The Coalition only requested backup. Ma'am, in human military doctrine, when civilians are in immediate danger and the enemy's capabilities are unknown, we don't send backup. We send overwhelming force to ensure mission success and minimal casualties. Hayes nodded. Make it happen. And, Colonel? Yes, ma'am? Tell Admiral Chun I want the entire 7th Fleet as escort. If these hostiles want to fight, let's make sure it's their last mistake. While Earth prepared its response, the situation at Kepler-7 continued to deteriorate. Dr. Elena Vasquez huddled with her research team in the station's reinforced laboratory as explosions rocked the facility. Through the viewport, she could see the alien ships methodically destroying their defensive systems. Elena, what's our status? Asked Dr. Theron, a tall, blue-skinned Andorian physicist. Hull integrity is holding at 60%. Emergency power is stable, but life support will fail if they hit us again. Elena wiped sweat from her forehead despite the cold air. Any word from Coalition Command? Nothing yet, replied Dr. Keswick, a crystalline silicate whose body reflected the emergency lighting. But, I've been monitoring long-range communications. There was a transmission to the human territories. Elena felt a flicker of hope. She had heard stories about human military responses, though most other species considered them reckless and overly aggressive. Right now, reckless sounded exactly like what they needed. The station shuddered again as another energy blast struck their hull. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the facility. "Dr. Vasquez," came a voice over the intercom. It was Captain Mordan, the station's Klingon security chief. "They're demanding our surrender. They want us to lower our shields and prepare for boarding." "What do they want?" Elena asked. "Unknown. They haven't made any specific demands beyond surrender." "But, Elena." Mordan's voice grew grim. "I've seen these tactics before. These aren't pirates looking for quick profit. This feels like something else entirely." Elena closed her eyes, trying to think. The research they were conducting involved ancient alien technology that could revolutionize faster than light travel. If these attackers knew about their work, the implications were terrifying. "Captain, how long can our shields hold?" "Maybe 6 hours if they maintain current attack patterns. Less if they intensify their assault." 6 hours. Elena prayed the coalition's backup would arrive in time, whoever they were sending. Back in human space, the mobilization was already underway. The 3rd Expeditionary Regiment, known as the Iron Wolves, were loading their equipment aboard massive transport vessels. These weren't just any Marines. They were veterans of the Outer Colony Wars, hardened fighters who had earned their reputation in the worst conditions imaginable. Sergeant Major Rebecca Stone checked her equipment one final time. At 45, she was old for a Marine, but her experience was invaluable. She had served in 3 different star systems and participated in over 50 combat operations. "Listen up, Iron Wolves," she shouted to the assembled Marines. "We've got civilians under attack, unknown hostiles, and a 6-hour flight to get there. Intelligence is minimal, so we prepare for everything." The Marines responded with a unified hurrah that echoed through the transport bay. "Our mission is simple: neutralize the threat and protect those civilians. No exceptions, no compromises. We go in hard, we hit fast, and we don't stop until every hostile is eliminated or surrendering." Private Jackson, fresh out of training, raised his hand. "Sergeant Major, what if they try to negotiate?" Stone's expression hardened. "Son, when someone attacks a research station full of civilians, they've already made their position clear. We'll give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we introduce them to human diplomacy." The Marines laughed grimly at this. Human diplomacy in military circles meant overwhelming firepower applied with surgical precision. As the transport ships launched from Earth orbit, they were joined by the 7th Fleet. 8 destroyers, 4 cruisers, 2 battleships, and the flagship dreadnought Terra's Wrath formed an impressive armada. For what the coalition had requested as simple backup, humanity was sending enough firepower to level a small planet. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath, studying the tactical display. "Time to arrival?" 5 hours, 37 minutes at current speed, reported his navigation officer. "Any updates from Kepler 7? "Negative, sir. Their communication array appears to be damaged, but long-range sensors still show the station intact." Chen nodded. "Signal all ships. We maintain radio silence from here on. I want complete surprise when we arrive." The Admiral had seen the intelligence reports on the attacking vessels. 15 ships of unknown configuration, aggressive tactics, and apparent disregard for civilian casualties. In his 30 years of service, Chen had learned that such enemies rarely responded to diplomatic solutions. "Admiral," called his tactical officer. "What are our rules of engagement?" Chen's expression was stone cold. "Any vessel that fires on civilians forfeits the right to mercy. We'll offer surrender once. After that, we solve this problem permanently." At Kepler 7, the situation was becoming desperate. The attackers had systematically destroyed most of the station's external defenses and were now targeting critical systems. Dr. Vasquez watched helplessly as another section of the station lost power. "Elena, they're hailing us again," Captain Mordan reported. "Put them through," she replied, steeling herself. The viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a figure that made Elena's blood run cold. The being appeared humanoid but wrong somehow, with pale, almost translucent skin and eyes that were completely black. When it spoke, its voice carried an otherworldly quality that seemed to echo from multiple sources. "Humans of Kepler-7, your resistance is futile. Surrender the artifact, and we will allow some of you to live." Elena tried to keep her voice steady. "We don't know what artifact you're talking about. This is a research station studying ancient technology." The being's expression didn't change. "Do not insult our intelligence. The fragment of eternity was discovered in this system 3 months ago. We know you have it." Elena's heart sank. The fragment was indeed their most significant discovery, a piece of technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics themselves. But it was locked in their most secure vault, and she would die before letting these creatures have it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. "Very well. We will take what we require from your corpses." The transmission ended, and immediately the attacking ships intensified their assault. The station's shields, already weakened, began failing in multiple sections. "All hands to emergency stations." Mordan's voice boomed over the intercom. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Emergency teams respond immediately." Elena looked around at her terrified colleagues. Dr. Theron was trying to comfort a group of younger researchers, while Dr. Keswick worked frantically at a computer terminal. "Keswick, what are you doing?" Elena asked. "If we don't survive this, someone needs to know what these beings wanted," the silicate replied. "I'm uploading all our research data and recordings to an emergency beacon. Maybe it will reach Coalition space." Elena nodded. It was a smart precaution, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. "How much time do we have?" "At this rate of damage, maybe 90 minutes before life support fails completely." 90 minutes. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine what backup the Coalition might be sending. She pictured a small patrol ship, maybe a squadron of fighters. It would have to be enough. She had no idea that racing toward them at maximum speed was the largest human military force ever deployed in Coalition space. The Iron Wolves were making final preparations aboard their transport ships. Each Marine carried enough firepower to level a city block, and their power armor was the most advanced technology Earth had developed. More importantly, they carried something the enemy wasn't expecting: the accumulated rage of humanity when civilians were threatened. Sergeant Major Stone walked through the transport bay, checking on her Marines. They were quiet now, the joking and banter replaced by the focused calm that preceded combat. Sergeant Major called Corporal Davies, one of her squad leaders. "What do we know about these hostiles?" "Not much," Stone admitted. "Unknown species, advanced technology, and a complete disregard for civilian life. That's all the intelligence we need." "How do we know they won't just destroy the station when they see us coming?" asked another Marine. Stone smiled grimly. "Because, son, they won't see us coming until it's too late." On the bridge of Terra's Wrath, Admiral Chen was reviewing the final approach plan. The human fleet would drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, using the local star's radiation to mask their approach. By the time the hostiles detected them, the Iron Wolves would already be deploying. "Admiral, we're receiving updated sensor data from our scout probes," reported the tactical officer. "The hostile fleet appears to be maintaining formation around the station. No patrols, no early warning systems." Overconfident, Chen muttered. "They think they're the apex predators in this system. Sir, should we attempt communication first? Offer them a chance to withdraw?" Chen considered this for a moment. Standard Coalition protocol would indeed call for attempting diplomatic contact before engaging. But these beings had already shown their intentions by attacking civilians. Negative. They made their choice when they opened fire on that research station. "We end this quickly and decisively." As the human fleet prepared for their surprise attack, Dr. Vasquez watched another section of Kepler-7 lose power. The emergency lighting cast eerie shadows throughout the laboratory, and the constant vibration from enemy weapons fire made it difficult to concentrate. "Elena," Dr. Theron called softly. "I've been thinking about what those beings said. The fragment of eternity, how could they know about it?" Elena had been wondering the same thing. The fragment was classified at the highest levels, known only to a handful of Coalition officials and the research team itself. Either they had a security leak, or these attackers had intelligence capabilities far beyond anything they had encountered. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we can't let them have it. The power contained in that artifact could devastate entire star systems if weaponized. Dr. Keswick looked up from the computer terminal. Elena, I've finished uploading our research data. But there's something else. I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their weapons. And they're not entirely alien. Some of the underlying technology appears to be based on modifications of Coalition designs. This news hit Elena like a physical blow. If these attackers had access to Coalition technology, it meant they either had inside help or had captured and reverse-engineered Coalition vessels. The station shuddered again, and this time the lights flickered and stayed dim. That was a direct hit to our main power coupling, Mordan reported over the intercom. We're now running on emergency power only. Life support will fail in 47 minutes. Elena felt despair creeping in. Even if backup was coming, they were running out of time. She looked around at her colleagues, brilliant scientists who had dedicated their lives to advancing knowledge and understanding between species. They didn't deserve to die because of some ancient artifact. Dr. Vasquez, came a new voice over the intercom. It was Lieutenant Yexhai, one of the junior security officers. I'm reading massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Something big just dropped out of hyperspace. Elena's heart leaped. How big? I can't be sure. Our sensors are damaged, but it looks like multiple capital ships. At least a dozen signatures. For the first time in hours, Elena felt hope. Whoever the Coalition had sent, it was more than just backup. But, as the minutes ticked by with no communication, she began to worry. What if these new arrivals weren't Coalition forces at all? What if the attackers had called for reinforcements? Her question was about to be answered in the most spectacular way possible. The silence was broken by a transmission that cut through all frequencies with crystal clarity. The voice that emerged was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its controlled fury. Unknown vessels attacking Kepler-7, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran 7th Fleet. You have 30 seconds to cease fire and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. Dr. Vasquez nearly collapsed with relief. The humans had come. She had heard stories about their military capabilities, but seeing 15 hostile ships suddenly, dwarfed by the massive energy signatures appearing on their damaged sensors, was beyond her expectations. The response from the lead attacker ship came immediately, that same otherworldly voice that had demanded surrender earlier. Human vessels, you are interfering in matters beyond your understanding. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Admiral Chen's response was swift and final. 30 seconds is up. Terra's wrath to all ships, weapons free. Show them what happens when someone threatens civilians under Coalition protection. The space around Kepler-7 suddenly erupted into chaos. The human dreadnought Terra's Wrath opened fire with its primary batteries, massive energy beams that lit up the darkness like artificial stars. The first hostile ship, caught completely off guard, disintegrated under the concentrated fire before it could even raise its shields. But the humans weren't finished. 8 destroyers burst from behind the dreadnought, their smaller but numerous weapons creating a deadly crossfire. The hostile fleet, which had been casually bombarding a defenseless research station, suddenly found themselves facing the most technologically advanced and aggressive military force in Coalition space. All Iron Wolf transports, begin combat deployment, came Sergeant Major Stone's voice over the Marine communication network. Remember, we have civilians on that station. Precision is key. The human transport ships launched thousands of deployment pods, each containing a full squad of Marines in powered armor. But these weren't standard Coalition landing craft. Human military doctrine emphasized speed, surprise, and overwhelming firepower. Each pod was equipped with its own defensive systems and could operate independently even under heavy fire. Commander Zephi, still patrolling nearby space, watched the battle unfold on his long-range sensors with growing amazement. When he had requested backup from the humans, he had expected perhaps a patrol ship or a small squadron. Instead, they had sent enough firepower to conquer a solar system. By the ancient gods, he whispered to his navigation officer. How many ships did they send? Sensors indicate 14 capital ships, sir. And those energy signatures. I've never seen weapons that powerful. On Kepler-7, the mood had shifted from despair to amazement. The attacking ships, which had seemed invincible minutes before, were now fighting for their lives against the human fleet. Through the viewports, Dr. Vasquez could see the hostile vessels breaking formation, some trying to flee while others attempted to use the station as a shield. "Elena," Dr. Theron called out, his blue face flushed with excitement. "I'm reading incoming transport signals. Someone's about to board the station." "Friend or foe?" Elena asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Her question was answered when Captain Mordan's voice boomed over the intercom, filled with relief and anticipation. "All station personnel, we have friendly forces inbound. I repeat, Coalition Marines are about to board. Prepare for immediate evacuation of critical areas." The first thing Elena noticed about the human Marines was the sound. Their powered armor made the deck plates ring with each step, a rhythmic metallic thunder that seemed to shake the entire station. When the airlock finally opened and they poured into the station, Elena understood why other species considered human military doctrine to be excessive. Each Marine stood over 7 feet tall in their armor, bristling with weapons and sensor equipment. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and utterly professional. But, more than their equipment or their size, it was their attitude that impressed her. These weren't just soldiers following orders. They moved with the focused intensity of beings who took personal offense at threats to civilians. Sergeant Major Stone was among the first Marines to board. She quickly established a command post in the station's main corridor and began coordinating the evacuation. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, her voice amplified by her armor's speakers. "I'm Sergeant Major Stone, 3rd Expeditionary Regiment. We're here to get you out of this mess." Elena found her voice after a moment of awe. "Sergeant Major, we have critical research data that cannot fall into enemy hands." "There's an artifact already briefed, ma'am," Stone interrupted. "My tech specialists are prepping the secure vault for extraction. We'll have everything important off this station within the hour." "But, the attackers are currently being reminded why threatening civilians is a bad idea," Stone said grimly. "Admiral Chen's fleet is making their displeasure known." Through the station's damaged viewports, Elena could see the battle raging in space above them. What had started as a one-sided bombardment of the research station had become a massacre of the attacking fleet. The human ships moved with deadly efficiency, their weapons cutting through enemy vessels like surgical instruments. But the hostiles weren't giving up easily. As Elena watched, one of the damaged alien ships broke from the main battle and headed directly toward Kepler 7 at ramming speed. "Incoming kamikaze," shouted a Marine monitoring the tactical display. Sergeant Major Stone's response was immediate. "All civilians to emergency shelters, now. Marines, prepare for impact." But the collision never came. One of the human destroyers, the UES Retribution, intercepted the hostile ship with a precision that defied belief. The destroyer's point defense systems disabled the alien vessel's engines with surgical strikes, then tractored it away from the station before it could complete its suicide run. "Show-offs," Stone muttered, though Elena detected a note of pride in her voice. The evacuation proceeded with military efficiency. Human Marines moved through the station in coordinated teams, securing each section and escorting civilians to designated safety zones. Dr. Vasquez found herself impressed by their professionalism. Despite their fearsome appearance, they were patient with the frightened researchers and careful to preserve important equipment. Dr. Vasquez called Corporal Davies, one of Stone's squad leaders. "We've secured your research vault. The artifact is ready for transport, but we need your authorization." Elena hesitated. The fragment of eternity represented years of research and potentially revolutionary advances in physics. Trusting it to military personnel, even friendly ones, felt wrong somehow. "Doctor," Stone said, noting her hesitation. "I understand your concerns. But right now, your biggest worry should be staying alive. My people know how to handle dangerous artifacts. We've been doing it longer than you might think." Elena realized she was right. Whatever the fragment was, it was worthless if they were all dead. "You have my authorization." As the Marines carefully extracted the artifact using specialized containment equipment, Elena couldn't help but notice their expertise. These weren't just soldiers. They moved around the ancient technology with the confidence of people who had dealt with similar objects before. "Sergeant Major," she asked, "how much do you know about what we were researching here?" Stone's helmet turned toward her, and though Elena couldn't see her face through the visor, she sensed a smile. Doctor, let's just say humanity has experience with ancient alien technology. More than most species realize. Before Elena could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring throughout the station. All Marines, we have multiple hostile contacts approaching the station, came a voice over their communication network. Looks like the bastards called for reinforcements. Through the viewports, Elena could see new energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. Dozens of them, larger and more threatening than the original attacking force. Sergeant Major, she said, her voice tight with worry. There are too many of them. Even your fleet will handle it, Stone said with absolute confidence. Doctor, you clearly don't understand how seriously humanity takes threats to civilians. What you're seeing out there isn't our full response. That's just our rapid deployment force. Elena stared at her. You mean there are more ships coming? Ma'am, when someone attacks a research station full of families and children, they don't just get the local patrol. They get the full attention of the Terran Defense Force. As if to prove her point, space around Kepler 7 suddenly filled with new energy signatures. Elena's jaw dropped as her damaged sensors registered what was arriving: 3 full battle fleets, over 90 ships in total, including massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even Terra's RAF. Admiral Chen, came a transmission over the open frequencies. This is Admiral Morrison aboard the TDS Earthshaker. Sorry we're late to the party. Chen's response came back immediately. Better late than never, Morrison. We've got multiple hostile reinforcements inbound. Looks like this is turning into a proper fight. Copy that. All ships, combat formation. Let's remind these creatures why attacking human-protected facilities is considered a career-ending mistake. The space battle that followed would be remembered in coalition military academies for decades to come. The hostile reinforcements, expecting to overwhelm a small human patrol force, instead found themselves facing the largest human fleet deployment since the Colony Wars. Dr. Vasquez watched in stunned amazement as the human ships moved with coordinated precision. Their weapons fire was so accurate it seemed almost choreographed, each shot calculated to disable enemy vessels with minimal collateral damage to avoid hitting the research station. But it wasn't just the firepower that impressed her. It was the tactical doctrine. Where coalition forces typically engaged in extended battles of attrition, the humans struck with overwhelming force designed to end the conflict as quickly as possible. They weren't just defeating the enemy, they were demonstrating that attacking coalition civilians was an unacceptable act that would bring swift and terrible retribution. Sergeant Major called one of the Marines monitoring communications. We're getting surrender signals from 17 hostile vessels. Patch me through to their flagship, Stone ordered. The transmission came through clearly. The same otherworldly voice that had demanded surrender from Dr. Vasquez now carried a note of desperation. Human forces, we did not realize this station was under your protection. We withdraw our claim and request safe passage. Stone's response was ice cold. Negative. You fired on civilians. You threatened families. Safe passage is no longer an option. But surely you have 2 choices, Stone interrupted. Surrender immediately and face coalition justice, or continue fighting and face human justice. I recommend the first option. Our justice system includes trials and appeals. Human justice in defense of civilians is considerably more final. The silence that followed lasted nearly a minute. When the alien commander finally responded, his voice was defeated. We surrender. All ships, stand down weapons and prepare for boarding. Elena felt a mixture of relief and awe. The crisis was over, but the implications of what she had witnessed were staggering. The humans hadn't just responded to a distress call. They had mobilized enough firepower to conquer half the galaxy, and they had done it to protect 300 researchers they had never met. Doctor, Stone said, approaching her as Marines continued the evacuation. Your people are safe, the station is secure, and the hostiles are neutralized. Mission accomplished. But why? Elena asked. Why send so many ships? Why risk so much for a research station? Stone's helmet retracted, revealing a weathered face with intelligent brown eyes. For the first time, Elena could see the human behind the armor, and what she saw surprised her. Stone wasn't just a soldier. There was something deeper there, something that spoke to a fundamental aspect of human nature. Doctor, let me ask you something. If you saw a group of strangers being attacked, would you walk by and do nothing? Of course not, but that's your answer. We don't measure our response by the strategic value of the target. We measure it by the fact that innocent people were in danger. Stone's expression hardened slightly. And we make sure that anyone who threatens innocence understands the consequences of their actions. Elena nodded slowly, beginning to understand. This wasn't about military doctrine or strategic planning. This was about something more fundamental. Human beings, she realized, didn't just defend their allies out of obligation. They did it because they couldn't imagine doing anything else. Sergeant Major called Corporal Davies. We've completed the evacuation. All personnel and critical materials are aboard the transports. Outstanding. Signal Admiral Chen that Kepler 7 is secure and ready for departure. As Elena was escorted to one of the human transport ships, she took one last look at her research station. It was damaged but intact, saved by the intervention of beings who had traveled across the galaxy to help complete strangers. The transport bay of the human ship was unlike anything she had experienced on Coalition vessels. Everything was built for efficiency and rapid deployment, but there was also something else. Personal touches, small decorations, and equipment modifications that spoke to individual personalities. These weren't just anonymous soldiers. They were people who had chosen to put their lives at risk for others. "Doctor," came Admiral Chen's voice over the transport's communication system. "This is Admiral Chen. I apologize that our response took so long. Next time, don't hesitate to call for backup immediately." Elena found herself laughing despite everything she had been through. "Admiral, when we called for backup, we expected maybe a patrol ship." "Doctor, when civilians are in danger, humanity doesn't send backup. We send overwhelming force to ensure the problem is solved permanently." Consider it a cultural quirk. As the human fleet prepared to escort the survivors back to Coalition space, Elena reflected on what she had witnessed. The galaxies were full of species that talked about cooperation and mutual defense. But humanity, she realized, was different. They didn't just talk about protecting the innocent. They backed up their words with enough firepower to reshape star systems. The hostile fleet that had attacked Kepler 7 was now in custody, their ships tractored by human vessels for transport to Coalition prisons. The survivors would face trial for their crimes, but Elena suspected they had already received an education they would never forget. As space around Kepler 7 returned to peaceful darkness, Dr. Vasquez settled in for the journey home. She had lost her research station, but gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that in a galaxy full of predators, humanity stood ready to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The Iron Wolves had come when called, and they had reminded everyone watching that some lines should never be crossed. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 7, as Coalition historians had already begun calling it, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the Coalition Council on Proxima Station. The massive chamber housed representatives from 47 different species, all gathered to hear her testimony about the events that had shocked the galaxy. The interrogation had been going on for hours. Some council members seemed genuinely interested in understanding what had happened. Others appeared more concerned about the implications of humanity's overwhelming military response. "Dr. Vasquez," said Counselor Vextai, a tall, gray-skinned being with multiple arms. "You maintain that the human response was appropriate, despite the fact that they deployed over 90 capital ships for a single research station?" Elena took a breath before responding. She had been expecting this question. "Counselor, with respect, I think you're missing the point. The issue isn't how many ships they sent. The issue is how quickly they responded when civilians were in danger." "But surely such an overwhelming display of force was unnecessary," pressed Counselor Moron, an insectoid representative known for his pacifist views. "Tell that to the 300 researchers who are alive today because of that unnecessary force," Elena replied sharply. Admiral Korthak, who had originally authorized the request for human backup, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Dr. Vasquez, while we appreciate the human response, there are concerns about their military doctrine. Some species are questioning whether humans can be trusted with such powerful capabilities." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "Admiral, are you seriously suggesting that the problem is that humans are too willing to protect civilians?" "We're simply concerned about the precedent this sets," interjected Counselor Zephan, a red-scaled reptilian. What happens when humans decide that their definition of protecting civilians doesn't align with coalition interests? The question hung in the air for a moment before a new voice spoke from the gallery. Perhaps you should ask the survivors of Kepler-7 what they think about human reliability. Every head turned to see Sergeant Major Rebecca Stone entering the chamber. She wasn't in her power armor now, wearing instead the dress uniform of the Terran Defense Force. But, even in formal clothing, her presence commanded attention. "Sergeant Major Stone," said Council President Kethmore, a elderly Vulcan-like being. "You weren't scheduled to testify today." "No sir, I wasn't. But, I was in the area and thought you might benefit from a military perspective on recent events." Stone walked to the center of the chamber with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being in hostile environments. "Counselors, you seem to be operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about human military doctrine. You're treating our response to Kepler-7 as if it were some kind of anomaly or aberration." "It wasn't." "Then, you admit that human forces routinely deploy excessive force?" Counselor Vextai asked. Stone's smile was sharp. "Counselor, let me explain something about human psychology. When we see innocent people being threatened, we don't calculate the minimum necessary response. We calculate the maximum possible response we can deploy to ensure those innocent people survive." "But, that's exactly what concerns us," Moron said. "Such aggressive tendencies saved 300 lives," Stone interrupted. "Including Dr. Vasquez here, who is only alive to testify because humans have aggressive tendencies when it comes to protecting civilians." Dr. Vasquez watched the exchange with growing admiration for the human sergeant major. Stone was facing down representatives from dozens of species, many of whom viewed humanity as dangerous newcomers to galactic society. "Sergeant Major," President Kethmore said carefully, "help us understand.